So I will call us to order. It is 6:33. Welcome everyone to our regular Board of Education meeting. Today is July 25th, 2023. I hope everyone's having a great summer so far. We are here at beautiful OVS and we're joined tonight by Dr. Weber, our superintendent, and the Colt team, the best team in the business. Thank you again, Megan, for setting us up, and the whole Ed Tech team. If you will all first rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, I would appreciate it.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you so much. Before we get too far along, let's have roll call. Dr. Campbell Boytel, please.
Right. President Lindsay Wilson.
Here.
Vice President Sarah Prescott. Here, hello. Treasurer Lisa McIntyre.
I'm here, hello.
Trustee James Mazurk.
Here.
Trustee Karen Meyer. Here. Trustee Melissa Stewart. Here. And Secretary Kim Campbell Boytel, myself. So we're all here.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that. And that brings us to number 4 on our agenda. But first, let's all congratulate Mr. Mazurk for the first time Grandpa, right? Yeah.
What's the name? What is your
little Luca, and he lives behind Ridgewood, so he's potentially a future Ridgewood Rocket.
Nice.
Excellent. The adoption of our agenda. Ms. Prescott, please.
It is motion number 1, and congratulations to all of you. You made it through your first partial year, and you're halfway done being
That's
president.
right.
So we're back to motion number 1. It's a motion that the agenda be adopted as presented.
Support.
So I have a motion properly presented by Ms. Prescott and supported by Mr. Mazurek. Do we need any discussion on this item? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Thank you so much for that. Bringing us to number 5 on our agenda, our consent resolutions. Ms. Prescott again, please.
It is number 2. I would move that the board accept the consent agenda items for approval as presented. A, minutes of the June 27th, 2023 Board of Education meeting. B, minutes of the June 27th, 2023 budget hearing of the Board of Education. C, overnight and or out-of-state field trip requests, which are 1, the NHS Rowing Club Regatta from Chattanooga, Tennessee, from November 3rd to the 6th, 2023. And 2, the NHS Rowing Club National Championship in Cooper River, New Jersey, from May 23rd to the 26th, 2024. C3, NHS Rowing Youth Nationals in Sarasota, Florida, from June 4th to the 9th, 2024. C4, the NHS Rowing Club Regatta in Columbus, Ohio, from October 27th to the 29th, 2023. That takes us to 5D, approval of our MOU for Brandt Consulting from 23-24 school year at Cook. 5E is adopting the resolution formally designating Northville Public Schools depository institutions. 5F is our bill warrants totaling $2,570,421.02. Support.
So I have a motion properly presented by Ms. Prescott and supported by, I think I heard Ms. McIntyre. Is that right? Any discussion on these items? These are consent resolutions. So just for folks in the public, a minute on this. These are items that we've all sort of prepared in advance, or we have had time to discuss in subcommittee or previous meetings. Any further discussion? Anyone?
No, just make a comment. I love our optimistic view of our rowing club. They come in and talk to us. They're basically award-winning, done an incredible job. But I love thinking ahead and knowing that I'm going to be in the national championships. And you know what? I think they're going to be there.
Call their shot.
Call their shot.
And
Right.
I believe they just won the award, and you would know this, for most improved team in the nation.
I think it was, yes. Yeah.
Awesome. Very cool.
Excellent. Anything
I
else?
just
Yeah.
wanted to mention the Brandt Consulting that would help staff at Cook, help students transition. I really appreciate the fact that we're providing that to our students as families as they move on from Cook. Seems very important.
Well, and the most important thing is we can actually use 11T funds to cover it, which as opposed to coming out of our base budget means we use one-time government. So this is the way we can utilize that money and get the biggest bang for the buck. So thank you, Mike and team.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So those passed. Thank you so much for that. That brings us quickly to number 6 on our agenda, our communications. Dr. Campbell Boytel, please.
Yes. We've had 2 communications, one from Wayne Reese's board highlights and the other through MPSBOE at northvilleschools.org.
Excellent. Thank you so much. That brings us to our superintendent report, number 7.
Fairly brief. I hope everyone is enjoying their summer. Last week was really one of the first times that I got to see how lucky I was to be in Northville, and it was when I visited the New Hope Grief Camp last year. And I had no idea kind of what I was walking into or what I would expect or what to expect, but seeing all the children who had lost people in their lives too early, and how New Hope attended to that, and then seeing school board members, staff members give their time to be counselors, our kids. I think your daughter, I sent a picture to the board, and I didn't realize it was her who did the Hope thing. It just caught my eye in the stable. And it just, I want to say thank you to the whole community, and New Hope is just down the street, and they just do amazing work. And it's one of those things that really does, I mean, there is, I don't want to sound corny, but there is a Northville difference. And that is one of the core reasons. And the fact that you all, people over here, not only talk about it, but put their shoulders into so many things and so many things that no one will ever know about that I am privileged to know that this whole group, people in this room do. Thank you. That's it.
All right, along those lines, I will thank Ms. Santer. It's so awesome to see you involved. I'm not surprised that you're involved in such a great effort as New Hope. My kids have been involved in one way or another for 5-6 years, whatever it's been. We volunteered at that camp. It's awesome. I think they had 120 kids at this year's camp. This is a camp for grieving kids, and they light up when they're there, and they get a chance to get out and be with other kids who have been through the same sort of thing. And it's really awesome to see the program's grown in both its number and just the quality of the things that it's offering. And it's a really awesome resource. So thank you for that note. I really appreciate that. And thank you, Ms. Santer, as well, and the whole New Hope team. Any other notes? Thank you, Dr. Weber. All right. That brings us extremely quickly. We are on pace here, but I don't want to jinx us. So number 8, public comments. This is our first of 2 opportunities for public comment. We always give 3 minutes to folks in the public who would like to take advantage of time to tell us about whatever's on their mind. Anyone in the public? Going once, going twice. That concludes number 8, our opportunity for public comment. And that brings us quickly to number 9, new hires. Ms. Prescott, our policy and HR liaison.
So happy to be able to present motion number 3. And this is that the board would award 1-year probationary NEA contracts to the following staff for the 2023-2024 school year as presented. Devin Harley, 1 FTE cook school teacher. Tahira Vanner, 1 FTE social worker. Caitlin Calero, 1 FTE Winchester teacher. And Brent Luplo, 1 FTE NHS teacher.
Support.
So I have a motion properly presented by Ms. Prescott and supported by Dr. Campbell Voitel. Do we have some presentations on these fine individuals?
So first, let's like to start with Devin Harley, who is a cook. As you know, finding teachers for cook is difficult. That is tough, but I guess I need to turn it on. We have been blessed this year so far to be able to find good people. Beth and I have been working hard. We interviewed Devin Harley, who, whenever you actually see him, is an extremely tall person. He was very tall, but he's a young man, just finished school, and he has a passion for these students. When I talked to his reference checks, they describe him as a very promising young teacher who basically has his heart on his sleeve. He really cares for his kids, and he really, I can tell you this piece. So this young man graduated from school in was it social? It was social studies. He had a social studies certification, but didn't feel fulfilled. So he went back, started his master's program to get a CI certification, and had been working in the CI program in the sub bases, long-term sub bases at the district he was at. And when I talked to his references, they just said that's the kind of kid, that's the kind of student he is, and they think he's going to be a great teacher for us. Social worker also, in the special ed world, extremely hard to find. We found Miss Tahira Vanner. I think what struck us about her immediately is she is probably the most detail-oriented person I've ever seen in my life. I mean, very extremely precise. She has over 10 years of experience in education. Her last, she's currently was at Southville Public Schools. When I talked to her references, they also echoed my stance that she's a very detail orientated, very very detailed notes. Her IEPs that she do are impeccable, and so we welcome her also to Northville Public Schools. Caitlin Calero, who actually was one of our, she came to our job fair. She actually, in the last two hirings, there's been several people that came to the job fair that we ended up hiring. She came with excellent recommendations. When we interviewed her, and we happened to have a very strong pool, we felt, when we did the interview, and she stood out. And the team was instantly like, we have to hire her. We'll figure out what grade she's going to, what school. So we did a little talking after that piece. She was described as an exceptional teacher who builds great relationships with her students and families. She has 6 years of experience. She has been off for a couple of years for, for her family issues. But her last district she was at was at Saline. So actually, my superintendent has connections out there, so I made some calls that way too. But everything came back excellent on her. Northville High School, we added an additional teacher. Now, earlier this year we had hired a football coach, and the young man we hired had dual certification in business and in English. And so as time went on, we wanted to add more supports to our school. So because of his certifications, it fit into what we needed to do, what we wanted to have happen. So we were also able to now hire him as a teacher in the building also. He was last at Brighton Public Schools, where he ran a very successful DECA club there. So for what we want him to do at the high school, it fits right into a skill set of being able to make those connections and help the students out academically. So we love making this recommendation to hire all four of these what we feel are going to be outstanding teachers for the district.
They do sound outstanding. Any additional comments or questions?
No, I just, these are great experiences. I was kind of looking through the backgrounds of some of these people, and I love the fact how they're multifaceted, right? Last person you talked about, right? Coaching, school, also was an advisor for a DECA club. That's really a broad capability to be a coach in football, JV basketball, I think, DECA and English. So, and really it's about people who utilize, both left and right brains, who you find out kind of, create the greatest value. So I love seeing that in here. And so great hires.
Great, thank you.
Have we always, sorry, go ahead. What are you about to?
It was off topic of these guys, but it was on hiring.
So is mine, I think. Have we always done the job fair? Or is that a new?
That was something we did this year new. And so what we ended up doing, and I'm gonna be honest, I wasn't sure how successful it was going to be. But I reached out to 3 other districts. I reached out to Novi, Plymouth, Canton, and Livonia. My thought process was that we're all destination districts, and so we could pull the candidates to us. And because if you've gone to the general job fairs we've all been going to, there has been very slim pickings. So we didn't know what we was going to get. So we showed up, and we literally had a line out the door. We probably had a couple of hundred people, or 100 to 200 teachers show up. We interviewed them all. We ended up hiring quite a few here. Also hired a bunch of, so far, 10 parapros from that job fair. It ended up being a great success for us and other 3 districts. So the fight now was to be like, the other districts like, we're going to do it again next year. And I'm like, yeah, they say they want to rotate it. I said, I'm fine with that. But I think that it was successful for all of us.
They want to rotate location?
Yeah. So I don't know if I'm going to give that up yet or not. It was nice having them on our turf at our high school and kind of, doing it that way. But
we are the most centrally located. It just
makes
perfect sense.
But that'd be a problem for next year. But it ended up being a huge success. So when I was at Wayne Risa last week, we had a planning meeting for our group, and it came up again in some other districts. I'm like, some other districts like, well, we're
They
close
want
to
in.
you guys. You know, I don't know if I want to
Oh.
expand it. That I don't know how far I want to take it, but it was an idea and it worked for us. So I'm going to continue doing it.
Great work.
Yep.
My question was, just looking, and I guess boys baseball is a spring sport. I know I'm not the most knowledgeable about it, but I assume that's going to be an issue for the parents. Is that hiring process
It is.
in progress?
Yeah, I know, I talked to the AD and Brian Smolsky and Tony Koski, and that is a position that is open and they're seeking applicants.
Mhm.
Okay.
So we'll hopefully get that buttoned up sooner than later so the parents know who's going to coach their kids.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Congratulations to the team and to these 4 individuals. Welcome aboard. So that brings us to number 10 on our agenda, and I believe I will be handing it over to Ms. Prescott, please.
Yep, it is motion number 4. I would move that the board approve for first reading the proposed policy revision, policy 2119, students entering or leaving the school district as presented. Support?
All right, I have a motion properly presented by Ms. Prescott and supported by Dr. Campbell Voitel. Do we have any presentation or discussion on this topic?
So as, I guess I'll take a lead as liaison, and I know Ms. Peck isn't here, but I want to hand it to our great central office staff. I mean, we kind of raised and they bubbled up an issue that had, maybe Ms. Peck had seen 1 or 2 or some of, and I think the board kind of jumped on the idea of what happens when kids, their parents have a contract to build a house, they're coming, but the school year is starting and maybe that house is incomplete or we can't necessarily be sure it'll be complete within our existing timeline. So this policy expands that timeline. Ms. Peck was clear in working with our outside counsel, about what was statutorily allowed in terms of how broadly we could do it. And I think the board's articulation was, if these kids are going to come here, making them move in the middle of a year or excluding them from the Northville family, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. That there's a commitment to the location. It's got principle and integrity to it. So we asked central office to go look and see what the breadth would be. This is what the policy that came to policy subcommittee. We looked at it. Truly and honestly, not a lot of discussion about it because the board kind of was clear on it. And, this is really fast. I think that we wanted to get this in place ASAP because it is affecting enrollment for this fall. And I think all 3 of us, if I can speak for, policy sub, we're thumbs up.
And the superintendent, I'd say, was really grateful for how quickly and enthusiastically the board gave us that direction. Anything we can do to get kids here to be part of our system. So thank you all for that as well. That helped us to go.
Yeah, and the biggest thing when I read it, because we crossed off 90 days, a couple areas and kept it in one, but it's the reference to 90 days of I purchased a house, as opposed to could I physically, get in for occupancy, especially with the issues of, construction sometimes isn't running on time, right? And didn't want to hold a kid out just because maybe, something came up and it got delayed a bit. So that's kind of what I read as the differential. It still does require the leaving district, I think, to sign off, but that's always been the case. So I think this is it's a good clarification and it focuses on people who've committed, right? They have a contract for a house and, we don't worry so much about, well, you showed up on day 95 because it didn't get complete or you didn't have your occupancy permit.
Right.
So
It's showing up on day
I think
95,
it's
right?
great.
Yeah. The other point I didn't make that was part of the board discussion was that, that we it was on the point of asking for permission. Did we get that? I guess it flew out of my head, but
That would reciprocate likewise.
we want to make sure that kids just get I know what it was. It's the feeling that this was serving our constituent, right? Like these are people who are moving here and committing to this community, and it was reactive to requests that were hot. They were active and people needed answers. So I just again, I really appreciate the speed that everybody embraced this with, so that we could really show those newcomers the customer service that we're trying to deploy.
Good job of the subcommittee getting this done so quickly and before us. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. Great job on that one. That brings us to number 11, and I will hand it over to our board treasurer, Ms. McIntyre.
Okay, I'd like to bring forth motion 5, that the board approve amending the district's 457 plan document as required by the IRS, provided by the CARES Act, as presented.
Support.
So I have a motion properly presented by Ms. McIntyre and supported by Dr. Campbell Boytel, I believe I heard. Any presentation or discussion on this topic?
I will hand it to Mr. Zopp.
No, this is actually a kind of a no-cost benefit really for our staff to have some additional flexibility in terms of accessing any distributions or loans from their 457 plan as provided by the CARES Act. So we just had to amend this by January 1st of 2024. So we needed to formalize it this way. So
All right.
highly recommend that we do this.
Makes sense to me. It's most supportive of our staff, so.
All right, let's vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So that passes. Thank you so much for that, bringing us to number 12.
Lindsay, can I
Oh,
just
yeah,
ask a question before we move on then?
Yep.
So number 10, the policy revision, that was the first reading. Do we still have to come back for a second reading and just go on consent agenda?
Yes, it'll go on consent.
Just go on consent. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that we were supposed to approve it today, or did we approve it when it comes back for consent? I just want to make sure from a process standpoint. But we're good. Okay.
All right, number 12, Ms. McIntyre again, please.
Okay, I'd like to bring forth motion 6, that the board award contracts to the following professional service providers for Bond 2023 projects as presented. AUK totaling $4,846,099. TMP totaling $3,588,516. Triple R Consultants totaling $38,000. Wright and Hunter totaling $580,200. And Peter Basso and Associates totaling 6.75% of final construction cost for NHS HVAC renovations and 5.5% of final construction cost for district-wide LED lighting retrofit.
Support.
All right, I have a motion properly presented by Ms. McIntyre and supported by Mr. Mazurik. Any discussion or presentation on this item?
Actually, I'm just going to let Steve and I think Michelle's gone, and Andrew with regard to Wright and Hunter and Triple R. So these are professional service contract providers to basically implement our bond program. So I'll just let Steve kind of go through some of the highlights of each of these.
Yeah, and just for the rest of the board, we actually just went through every single one of these contracts during finance committee review just an hour and a half ago. So we went through them kind of, in a fairly fine-tooth comb and made sure they were consistent with what we've done in the past. And I will say several of these people have kept their rates pretty consistent with what they gave us in 2017. And considering the inflationary situation that we're in, I thought that was actually pretty good when we went through it.
I think to credit to the team, right, for continuing to ask and push and pull and really, ask for that consideration.
Despite the fact we had to go beat up on some cabling guys, but we're good other than that. It's a side joke.
Right.
I think that having the leadership on the COLE team that allows us to scrutinize potential efficiencies and to utilize staffing and management oversight, in a coordinated manner to across the entire district, sometimes allowing work to be going on at, in several schools simultaneously. All of those kinds of efforts really produce benefit for our bottom line. So I was really valued hearing about that.
Steve, since we do have, a lot of new board members this year, it'd be helpful just to explain the difference between what each of them does. So what does AUK's role play? What does TMP's role play? For the old hacks here, we understand that, but I think that would be great for new board members, just kind of understand what each of these people, what their function is within the whole bond study as far as work.
Right. So we'll just kind of go in the orders as they are presented in the agenda. So Out Construction is our construction manager. They handle a lot of the logistical planning in conjunction with the architect. They handle all of our bidding of all the construction projects. They'll take a construction project and divide that project into multiple prime contractors, targeting, the drywall contractor, the mason, the concrete contractor. They assist us with bidding out all those projects, assembling team, post-bid interviews, putting together a bid award presentation and a recommendation. And then they help during the construction phase, manage all those contractors, procurement, the logistics. A project like Hillside, we had 40 plus individual contractors that they were wrangling from times to time. So it's a pretty involved project. How the construction management team puts their fee together, there's a percentage of construction. We negotiated with AUK to retain the same rate from 2017. So if you look in the proposal packet, you'll see a lot of red marks and different things on it. I'm going to back up a second. We asked all the professional team members for a proposal back in April. We've been using this time since the passage of the bond to negotiate the economics of it. The contract language is going to be very similar to the 2017 bond. So the actual contract, when it's all said and done, it's about this thick, the language in it. But we're really targeting the economics right now, and that's what we're asking the board to award. So the construction management fee is the same from 2017. The other part of where the construction team, is their staffing reimbursement. So we push back on them a little bit to create some efficiencies, align project execution to try to get the most efficiency with their staffing. So we're aligning projects, looking at how many different projects a particular superintendent could watch and manage at one time. It's a lot easier to manage a paving project that might have one or two contractors on it, or LED lighting retrofit that might have one contractor on it versus a big complex project like Meads is going to be. But we'll take those individual easier projects and bundle them up together and try to execute them at the same time, so that person is watching multiple projects when they're here. So we really pushed back on them and try to get the most efficient staffing plan we could. That's why you can kind of see the revisions from their initial proposal to their final one. There's other components to it, but the construction manager really is our partner from, even in the pre-bond planning, they were there during the assessment portion, all the way through the punch list, through the closeout. We've got surplus materials and documents of everything that was done. So they're here from the beginning to the end. So AUK's have been a good partner, and they've been very great in negotiating this revised economics. So the next one is TMP Architecture. Again, we got a proposal from them in April. We went back and forth with them over a period of months, trying to figure out what scope of work they would actually design, and then assign a dollar value of construction and push back on their percentage for their fee. So again, they've been a great partner for a number of years here in the district. They were instrumental in putting a lot of the pre-bond documentation together during all phases of the pre-bond work. They were a great partner. Again, we're just asking the board to approve the economics that we finally settled on tonight. I'm going to let Andrew talk about Wright and Hunter.
Wright and Hunter is our technical consultant. They will be doing the same thing of like bidding, designing, bidding, and then project managing the projects. We actually asked for some like proposals. We had a response from Plant Moran. Plant Moran was higher. Wright and Hunter was lower. We've used Wright and Hunter since 2011, so it was nice that like it was an easy decision to go with them as low bid. We also parsed out the fiber installation, and we moved that to Triple R Consultants. Because of the delicateness of it's being federal funded. So this will be done through E-rate. And with E-rate, you have to really kind of measure twice and cut once. And so with Triple R, they actually have somebody who is a former a company owner of a fiber installation company, so he will know how to properly file the plans with DTE, and then have file the bid and have the correct design so that we can submit to E-rate a complete package so that we can get a full reimbursement on it. Because the project is quite expensive. We want to make sure that it's all encompassing and fully funded.
Last but not least, Peter Basso Associates. These two projects within the bond scope, the HVAC renovations or remodeling at Northville High School and LED retrofit district-wide. Again, they don't really fall underneath the architectural umbrella. They're very specific engineering efforts. So we pulled that scope of work out of the overall contract, pulled out a TNP scope of work, got a proposal directly from Peter Basso. They've been our engineering partner since well before I was employed here. They actually do the engineering work for TNP. So they're all part of the same team. We just pulled this little puzzle out, or the piece of the scope out. So their fee is based on a percentage of the actual construction value, not with the budget. We're hoping to get some efficiencies, how we package and bid these projects together. For example, the LED lighting retrofit, we're going to design all the buildings, put it out to bid for one contractor so they can execute the work over multiple buildings, over multiple years. We're going to let them kind of dictate the schedule because a large project, a large retrofit like this, trying to do it all in one summer is kind of difficult. So we want to give them some flexibility to work on second shift during the school year, on breaks, on weekends, or during the summer, because that will give them flexibility in their schedule and let them kind of resource level their manpower. So if we give them that sort of flexibility and that sort of volume, we're hoping to bring the price of this project down versus where we budgeted.
So just add a couple of things. One, all of these players have quite a long history of working with Northville. They were key players delivering on the 2017 bond. And a reminder for any constituents who are listening, we delivered on that project on time and under budget. And actually that being under budget allowed us to bring some additional projects that weren't in the original proposals that we gave to the voters back in 2016 or when we did that project. The other thing that they do that I don't think was mentioned is when we get quotes back from sub-suppliers or contractors, they analyze those quotes, give us feedback on them, and give us recommendations of, we got this really low-cost bidder, but do they have proven history? Can they really deliver, right? And so they provide other sets of checks and balance to make sure when we get these like 40 subcontractors that each of them has the capability and their quotes are valid and can kind of compare one off the other. So that's part of the role they play as well. So anyways, I wanted to add that.
Thank you.
I just had a question relative to the Wright and Hunter contract. I don't see Cook or Hillside mentioned in the systems upgrade. Is that because Hillside, is everything at Hillside still considered up to date that would happen? And how does that work with Cook too?
There is scope of work to be done with Cook.
Okay.
And just do you know what page?
10.
10, 9, 10.
So Karen, if you look on page 28 of the Wright and Hunter, I like this chart. This chart is very nice. It's got little colored dots that show all the schools. This one's really nice to look at.
I think Steve, would you know what phase Cook would be in?
As far as the tech scope?
Yeah. I mean, I believe that he just did not type that in.
Okay.
I think it's, a part of it, but whatever phase 1, 2, 3, 4, Cook is in there. Hillside has very minimal to be done, but a good example would be like the interactive flat panels. Those are going to get upgraded globally So whatever is going to be in like, the elementaries, Hillside will have those, and then those interactive flat panels will then get placed, either in early childhood and at Cook. So like there will be improvements designated for those buildings.
Okay, thank you.
There's also, just for reference, and I know the public can't see this, but in the AUK presentation, which you'll find loads of pictures and materials, page 55 has a really nice, I'm going to call this preliminary, but it's a preliminary plan that talks to the big level projects and when is the design phase, when's the bid phase, when the procurement and that. It's premature to set this out. We need to kind of approve who the contractors are, but this will be something we'll be dotting i's on and crossing t's on. And then I believe that Katie will figure out a way to broadcast to the public in maybe a simpler format, but kind of communicate that this is the plan. This school will be at this time, this school will be this time, and kind of see the rollout of it over the course of the next 4.5, 5 years.
That's great, because Kim and I were with members of the community yesterday, and they're already getting questions on that. They're waiting to see nails in the wall, so it's a great way.
Anyway, so there's a ton of material in here, but just for the board has this now. You can look at it. The team will work on it, and probably sometime in the next, X amount of weeks or so, there'll be some public communication to a plan. So just for your own purposes, I think it's a really good piece to have and save.
Well, it seems like we're like in kind of that transition phase, right? That some of the projects from the previous bond are completed or completing, and now we're in the planning development stage, implementation phasing stage for this next bond. But it looks odd, right? When you see a project get completed, you're like, wait, we just passed a bond. How did they already do this with that bond money? But it really was from previous bond money, right?
Yeah, and we didn't want to get, until the bond actually got approved by voters in May, we really didn't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. I mean, we did start on the grandstand project because from a safety standpoint, we felt that was important to start there. But we didn't want to obviously invest too much money without, making sure that the bond was going to get passed, so.
Yeah. I was wondering, so when you're talking about replacing all the, Promethean boards, and what happens to the old ones? Do we try to sell those and recoup some money for the district?
They're
or?
10 years old. And in technology, that's like, they're pretty, I can tell you, we're trying to still keep them and support them. Everything is now interactive flat panel, like an LCD television. So having a projector kind of managed is really kind of passe. But we do recycle it, but most of the time especially with older equipment of that age, the recycler, the fees for the recycler and the what they'll pay us for the equipment almost comes out to like even. So like they'll recycle it, they'll do the reselling, but the price will kind of almost be for what it costs for them to pick up the equipment to properly. So we do recycle it though. I mean, we're not going to really throw this stuff into a dumpster, but like we'll call a recycler and have it for, but it's really, we're not going to get much, if any, money for like the Promethean boards. The computer equipment we do sell and we do get money for. Yeah.
Okay. Can I know that the chart that Jim pointed to is
Preliminary.
it's preliminary. And so that may just be the answer, which is fine. But I just noticed that the Silver Springs construction isn't until 2027. And it's not broken down exactly what's what or whatnot, but what about like the HVAC?
That would be the schedule for that. So it is, both Winchester and Silver Springs, those systems are the same vintage. But again, we're trying to prioritize, you can't do it all in one summer. I can't have engineers design everything at once. Ammerman and Moraine are some of our oldest buildings, and they were the first ones in the previous bond. So the sequence is pretty close to how we went through the previous bond as far as Ammerman was one of the first ones out of the chute. It needs a lot of work. We can go back and forth, but this was really my determination of, in working with Colt on how we execute these projects. The newer buildings are toward the end. You can see Thornton Creek and Ridgewood.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The older ones are in the beginning, and you'll see Meads is just a bigger project that it takes a longer time. It's really going to take 2 summers. And then you have Winchester and Silver Springs kind of in the middle there. Sometimes you have to make a decision. That was kind of our first jab at it. It makes sense from my knowledge of the buildings and how we are going to execute them. I don't necessarily, this is my best stab on what I think the needs are.
I trust you, Steve. I know you would do it all at once if you could. So if I hear you right, the right answer is we have a hierarchy of needs and we are flying through them as fast as we can, and that's the answer.
That's my kind of stab at the answer.
Good questions, good points. Anything further? Any other questions for the team? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. That passes. That brings us to number 13, and I will hand it over to Mr. Mazurek.
Sure. I bring motion number 7, that the board authorize the administration to purchase the instructional materials K-5 SAM's lab STEAM curriculum totaling $65,634.80 as presented.
Support.
So I have a motion properly presented by Mr. Mazurek and supported by Ms. McIntyre. Any discussion on or presentation number 13 here?
I'm excited to be able to bring forward for you the next step in our STEAM programming. As a matter of fact, our teachers are so excited they all came here tonight, which is the middle of their summer break. We have hired our additional STEAM teachers to introduce you this evening. Our existing teachers, Kim Chenoweth, Megan Davis, were already doing STEAM for us in our short program. We've hired on Chris Parnan as well as Kate Sims, teachers from Ammerman and Ridgewood respectively, who will be joining us for our STEAM team this year. They have been working. They have been working very hard. As a matter of fact, those of you that would like to join us up, because I would rather hear from them than me on some of this, because they're the ones who've done all the hard work. From the moment we hired our 2 additional teachers at the end of the school year, they have begun the process of digging into a lot of different materials and a lot of different curriculums and working hard in what is a time when they're not supposed to be working at all. So we appreciate what they have done thus far. They have really vetted a lot of different materials. They came to a decision on these materials after a lot of review and discussion. They took some time to try the materials out. They got some sample access to the materials. So if one of you want to join us up here just to share a little bit since you're here.
Hi. So for those of you that don't know me, I'm Christine Parnan. Gosh, I think I've had some of your kids in my class over the years. I just have a couple things to tell you about SAM Labs, because we are here as a united team to let you know that we're all on board with it and we're very excited about it. As it was mentioned, we've looked at a lot of different materials, and one of the things that we found with SAM Labs is that it works really well with our humanities schedule, so there's some flexibility there. The other thing that we absolutely loved about it is that it fits in with the Common Core standards, the next generation science standards, and the computer technology standards. It's also able to link to ClassLink, and so the kids will have a quick and easy login for the software, and then there's a hardware component where they'll be doing some hands-on engineering activities with that as well. I also wanted to make sure that you're aware that there's some differentiated lessons for kids who might be struggling with the lessons. There's lots of visuals for kids that need visual aids to walk through the lessons, and it also goes up into some really higher level engineering thinking for our kids that might need additional challenges. And just to kind of finish off, there is a little character with SAM Labs, and his name is Blocky. And we're really looking forward to our elementary kids coming home and telling their parents all about their adventures with Blocky. And we are here as a team again to thank you for the approval of this curriculum, because we're really excited to roll it out this fall. Do you have any questions for the team or?
I only have, go ahead.
I had a question relative to linking to devices, and I was wondering if, are there enough computers? How is that going to work with the addition of this classroom and this program in classrooms using computers at the same time? Is that an issue at all?
So Andrew has great news for us. He actually shared with me just before. Do you want to share the good news since it's your good news?
Next board meeting, we're going to get Chromebook carts for each of the STEAM areas, and we're also going to get iPads. So we have to bid out the carts, so the cart bid is out, but then all the other materials will be purchased under MC.
Oh.
So they'll have dedicated technology just for those 6 classrooms. They won't necessarily be borrowing or taking away from the existing elementary rooms like they have been doing thus far. So these carts, since they're there full-time, will be available to them full-time. And the iPad carts are what they use for some of their devices, including Osmos. Am I saying that one right? Yeah. There's a lot of names in this. But, these materials also include all of their chargers. They include their professional development. They include full lessons, access for students to have access to the online coding software. They have microbits, which are some of the coding program pieces that they'll be using, Lego robotics kits, their light sensors, and the program is not necessarily something that will be all encompassing. They will continue, and stop me if I'm wrong, but they will continue using some of the things they have already developed. And so this will be kind of their core curriculum, but they will choose from these things that they have, deciding on, again, because we're staggering this curriculum over time, because these K-5 kids will be the first time they've ever had this program. It'll be different the following year, and different the following year, and different the following year. And in the near future, and it may not be this year, but soon, we'll be coming back to you for much bigger equipment. That program really will head into things like laser cutters and high-end 3D printing and CNC machines. So we will step ourselves into this, but this will give them a strong head start and moving kids. I had someone, Katie Rourke, actually came by my office today, and she said, they did coding, the Code 101 was at summer school today. And I said, great. And she said, the person there said, how many of you have ever heard of Scratch? And she said, every kid raised their hand. And the lady who runs it was like, how do you all know Scratch? And they're like, we learned that in STEAM. So it was very great to see that. But to be able to take that to the next level, that's what these kind of materials are going to do for them. But this is not the end all be all. There is still more to come. But with the technology in this, we have a great head start on a first year at a full-time program. So I appreciate all the work that the 4 of them have done on their summer break to make this possible.
Are there any other schools in Michigan or in our area that are kind of doing the same thing that you guys are watching, or
Yes.
are you just
So
blazing?
SAM labs are taking off in the Midwest.
Yeah.
And many, I have a list of many of the cities in Michigan that are using SAM labs. And to kind of piggyback off of your question too, the hardware are programmable blocks. And one of the things that we liked about it was that as the different classes come in throughout the day, you can reprogram the blocks. Where with some of the other programs, they would have to build it and let it sit. And then, well, what do we do with the other classes? So it's SAM labs. And I think this might be why some of the other local districts are using it as well, is that it's usable for multiple classes throughout the day. And yeah, it's the rep that we spoke with was actually from Michigan, and she was telling us, I can't believe how many districts in Michigan are starting to pick up this program.
Right.
And we, the team, Kim, facilitated a visit to the Farmington STEAM School as well. They have a K-8 program there. We got a chance to meet with their STEAM teacher, the makerspace teacher. He was very helpful in kind of understanding the roadblocks he's been through, the lessons he's learned. And we weren't there just for equipment and thing. We were there to see the environment as well as we think about planning for these new spaces like electricity and flooring and even airflow and understanding how to ventilate some of this equipment that we're thinking about in the future. So they are really working hard to try to see what's happening out there. I do think that our facilities, I mean, their building is nice, but that room was definitely, it was interesting. It was like a hodgepodge. We're really ahead of this by having great spaces to begin with, and now filling them with the right equipment, I think will put us a step ahead of them. And the professional development that's offered here, which is unlimited for our teachers, and the support they'll provide from their SAMS Labs reps is really beneficial because our teachers have someone to reach out to.
Right. So I always am a deductive thinker. And so I went to the district goals, and I want to make a very positive, supportive statement about how aligned this next step is with what we have set for ourselves in terms of district goals. So for instance, for those nerds like myself who read the goals all the time, but they are posted online for those of you who are in the public. Number 3, reimagined curriculum and instruction. B is instructional delivery, and under B, for and fit-based learning, engaging pedagogy as well across content areas. So I think that I was delighted to see progress in this area and the goal that we have set for ourselves, and that it is aligned with our Common Core standards. So it's standards driven. And I think that really helps us all stay focused on what we're trying to achieve with our children and how we move them, we scaffold their learning and move them forward in a way that makes sense to their readiness. So I'm just trying to draw some other kinds of connections that I think really strengthen this decision. And, as just on my little private, personal level, I'm wondering how is the report card going to look differently in terms of how are you going to communicate what children are accomplishing to parents on the report card in a K-5 setting?
So currently, we're reviewing the report card standards. The report card standards that we used actually, I should say that the STEAM teachers used last year align really well with the SAM Labs curriculum in the engineering design process. And so we're going to continue with the same standards that they had on their report card last year for the STEAM class because it aligns so well with the SAM Labs curriculum and all of the other things that we'll be bringing in to enrich the STEAM room.
Okay. Well, that's wonderful.
I just had one really simple practical question. I mean, I know we're getting 12 of the SAM Labs course kits, the SAM Lab makers kits, and some other things in that. And we've got a 3-year subscription. And as much as in electronics, you like to think that, these things are reusable, how easy it is to get replacements. Are they local when we inherently kids break stuff, right? But I just want to make sure that as something happens in year 2 and 3, right? We hope year 1, no breaks, but we can easily get replacement parts and replacement pieces for this.
As soon as a piece breaks, we put it in the envelope, they pay for shipping, and they send us a new part.
Cool.
Are they in the UK?
I love it.
Are they in the UK?
Their headquarters are based in the UK, but they're local in Boston.
Oh, okay.
They have a Boston headquarters here.
Those are some specific questions and some very
That's
specific
okay.
answers you guys.
Dr. Campbell is on DCC. This went out to DC electronically because we didn't have a meeting with them. So I sent the materials to them to review. I did get quite a few responses back. A lot of support, a lot of people very excited about what it looks like, had some questions that we answered for them. Dr. Campbell had a few questions that we have addressed tonight, but some we haven't. I just want to really lay them out because it lays the groundwork. One of our questions was, how does this scaffold into the 6-8 PLTW? I want to be really clear that PLTW is not setting the tone for us. These K-5 teachers are going to set the tone for the future. So they're going to step us into the next level. We are not stepping into PLTW. We will keep PLTW at its level right now while these kids continue to build these skills. But ultimately, we anticipate seeing the 6-12 drastically change because, again, Scratch wasn't taught to our middle schoolers 2 years ago in Digital Journey, and now our K-5 kids are learning it. So as they start to step these kids into new things that they wouldn't have been doing this early, our middle school and high school programs will have to adjust. And so I don't want to scaffold into PLTW. I want PLTW to either get on board or we make a change at some point.
Thank you.
I have a goal to hear about early childhood ed learning Scratch before I leave the board.
I have had a conversation with Chelsea Simons about the possibility of some STEAM kind of initial things.
I was totally kidding.
No, I'm not.
That sounds
Get them to block.
I'm not kidding. There are
outrageous,
things that
but
these
I
3 and
won't
4-year-olds
do
can
that
do. It's not unusual
I know,
for them
they're
to be
crazy.
exposed to some of these things.
before Miss Parnan leaves, it's always hard to, sometimes when I'm on the board, I think, well, I don't know if I would say it right, but I just want to lift up a contribution that she made. Like when we were in COVID, there were so many incredible little pockets of amazement at every week we met. But I'll so clearly remember staring at the class arrangement for Ammerman in the fall. in the fall of 2020 and being like, that can't be right. What she was assigned, she had like one of the most complicated assignments, I think, in the whole, maybe the whole district, or at least I thought so at the time. And I had a whole conversation, you were there, with Suzanne, where we sat down with Devin and some other principals and talked about it, because we were like, can this possibly work? And I just want to thank you for what you did that year. So it's not less for any other person, including, some of the teachers that are here tonight. But I just remember that conversation so distinctly because it was so, I don't want to get into the details, but I remember it was like a huge class number. It was online, it was this, it was that. There was a student teacher. There was just a whole bunch of interesting and difficult things to juggle. So I want to thank you since you're here before the board.
Thank you. I really couldn't have done that without my team. So my team was there to support me. I do have to add, because this is at the top of my brain for early childhood, build it, test it, redesign. That's what we can start telling our early childhood teachers that the kids can be doing while they're in their preschool room.
Awesome.
Thank you for your kind words. I appreciate it.
I just, last year when we were talking about eliminating world language and wondering what's the curriculum that's going to be robust enough for STEAM, that we're, making such an adjustment. So I just want to say thank you to the team for really digging in and finding something that is such a treasure like this, that I personally had a lot of heartache and about that decision. So I feel really confident and proud of all of the efforts that all of you have done to make it really amazing. And so
Good point,
kudos.
because that was a tough decision. That was a
Yes.
tough meeting, tough decision, and tough moving forward, but I think it was the right decision.
Yeah, agreed.
Several tough meetings. So I just want to say, this is really exciting stuff. I mean,
Lindsay did have a full head of hair. just
that's
6
right.
months ago.
And, I'd like hair replacement to become part of the STEAM curriculum at some point. But early childhood, the sooner the better, from my perspective. No, really, this is super exciting, and I want to thank the whole team. I mean, great questions, great tying it together, great particular questions, but also, for the folks who are so energetic and excited about this, the great advocacy on the part of the STEAM team, right? I mean, I think it really makes an impact on us when and there have been several times when groups of teachers or staff have come in and said, we think we've spent a lot of time thinking about this. We think this is the way of the future. This is, we're going to scaffold it out or stage it out or phase it out, whatever the term is. And super excited about it. And so it may seem like a waste of time to show up and have to come in the middle of the summer, but it is really impactful, I think, on us. And really, if you can't tell, it gets us excited and kind of knowing, we're doing the right thing here. And so I want to thank you guys for showing up. Any questions?
I just
Anything
have
else?
one last thing I want to say.
Yeah.
We also have some seasoned teachers who are stepping into this role. And that, I think, is just a huge testament to the vision and that we all can change our brains a little bit and do something different. So
Yeah.
I think this is really exciting.
And we, when we did interviews, both Kate and Ms. Parnan, they were so excited and so energetic and brought these examples and ideas of things they were already doing. This isn't new for them. This is just bigger for them. So we have full confidence that, already seeing just the four of them together, I really am excited to see what's possible with them. The only thing that will hold us back, just so you know, is money. I mean, it's always going to be money, because the more ideas they have, the bigger ideas they have, the more expensive this gets. But it certainly, that kind of technical equipment in the future, especially as we think about the middle school and high schools, the dollar amount gets really big. And I've had some initial discussions, which I've shared with you in the board updates. Those numbers are what I anticipated. This program, by the time it's over K-12, you're talking about $1.5 million in equipment potentially over the next 5 or 6 years. So we're going to work hard. We've got some bond money available. That equipment is not fully bond funded. NEF is working hard on their side, trying to find some ways to get companies to begin to think about that, and we try to make as little impact in the general fund as possible. Like, this curriculum has to come from the general fund because it can't be bond funded, although the tech will be funded either through the sinking fund or through the bond. But their only limitation from my point of view was going to be finding the funds.
So Mike, what he's telling you behind the scenes, that money we got in the bank that's earning some interest and doing pretty good? He's tapping it.
Well, we're going to tap the outside world first, because I know there are companies out there who are happy to see this stuff happening, and I think we can get some money from them. Whether it's $1 million or not, we'll find out.
I hope this isn't too in the weeds, but I was fascinated to learn a few years ago that the instruments that we buy could be bondable. And I was curious about that because I always heard like if you turned the school upside down and you shook it, whatever stuck was bondable, right? And everything else not, which is a terrible idea, but not to do, but it was visible in my mind. But instruments were an exception. And I'm interested in this question about sort of like the machinery, the manipulables.
That is, and we've got $500,000 worth of that equipment
Even
in
though
the bond.
but this stuff like
But
when
this
we
has curriculum related to, so we're talking about the lessons and things like that. Although there's materials built into it, it gets a little sticky when you try to take core curriculum.
Sure, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I just wonder if the market could move, like, well, maybe Michigan is its own thing, but it just seems like if they could break out, these are the manipulable, this is what's akin to the instruments, and this is the curriculum. Or if we could like wedge that apart, like, could we maybe pay for some of this steam? It's just food for thought as we go
Yeah,
forward.
I mean,
like,
ultimately, it's $500,000 either way. So once we spend it, we spend it. Whether we spend it on, we still got to find the other million somewhere else. So that's the challenge over the next 5 or 6 years, is to find it even in chunks because we won't be doing any one space all at one time. You saw the construction schedule. It's going to take time. We build those facilities. We bring the equipment in. This gets them on the head start, and then we start to get that other big equipment coming in.
Okay, thank you.
All right, exciting. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Thank you so much. That brings us to number 14.
Thank you.
Yeah. So any added agenda items? Ms. Irving, anything? Dr. Weber, board, all right. Our second of 2 opportunities for public comments. Going once, going twice. All right, that brings us to number 16, questions, comments from board members. And before we light into that, maybe some words on sequencing bond projects. If we haven't, to the extent we haven't already.
Pretty much what Jim pointed it out, the one schedule that's in that AUK package on page 55 kind of just lays out what we have. And again, as Steve said, I mean, this is our initial shot at it. We're trying to workload balance, trying to do what we think is the most efficient, cost effective, and kind of a needs-based approach. So just kind of work at it as we go.
The only question that I wanted more specifically to follow up on, and I understood where it came. It might have come from PTA needs, or it might have come to the board in a comment, or it might have been both, because it was a couple weeks back. There's like a leaky roof.
Yeah, we talked about
bucket.
that.
Did you already talk about that, like at finance?
In finance, we talked about it.
Okay, so like the parent real understandably was like, so you're building these beautiful bleachers, and they have a bucket, with a leak. So, like, was that something that maybe is just because it's more a daily operational impact is on the list?
Trust me, we have more than one leak in our facilities here in Northville, so.
Yeah.
Taking that one comment kind of out of context, if there's a leak, we have service providers that will try to address it. Can't remember where that specific one was, but, we do have problematic leaks that sometimes we don't get right the first time. So we'll work on it and we'll try to get that addressed. But one leak doesn't say that we need to necessarily jump that area ahead of other areas.
I understand. And that's the broader picture that you guys do. I just couldn't remember if that had come, it sounds like it came to the board and.
Well, it was in social media. I don't remember where it was, but I remember seeing it in social media.
Well, we witness it in meetings.
I was curious to know too, like, once we repair leaks, do we also do like the cosmetic fixes too then?
We'll replace the ceiling tile, that sort of stuff.
Okay, paint the wall, whatever. Okay.
So as we're going through the sequencing, I know, so in the packet, which one was it that had it was the TMP proposal that had the pre-bond sketches for each building. So as we're going through and, okay, now it's, Ammerman's turn. And so you'll be sitting down with, the building principals and the architects and everyone.
So that process has really already started.
Mhm.
It started, really back at the end of May, trying to put together the parameters these design meetings, it's an effort. We had some pre-design meetings before the principals left for Ammerman and Meads. So we sat down with Devin, we sat down with Brad and Will and said, okay, here's where we're at. Is there anything within the context of what we're going to do? Hey, we're not going to, there's not going to be a helipad on Ammerman when it's done, but within the context of the bond scope, what are your priorities and what really matters to you? So we had some of those meetings in May before they left. We have follow-up meetings, and then the architect goes away, makes a ton of little sketches, lots of good sketches. We actually went to TMP, Mike, what was it, last week? They gave us some updated views of what those projects, what that direction is going. And then we have meetings scheduled in August, first week and the second week of August with Ammerman and Meads again, bringing the whole team back together and say, hey, we heard you. This is the direction we're going, and we want to get feedback on that direction from the educators. So there's going to be a number of those meetings. When we really get into the weeds, then we'll ask Aaron to reach out to the STEAM team. And we're going to have meetings with them because as we go through and look at these STEAM spaces, we want to be consistent from building to building. So we want to get their input early on. So what we do at Ammerman gets done at Ridgewood and Thorn Creek. So this is the fun part. The design process is the fun part. Once we bid it out of construction, then everyone just complains about construction. But this is the fun part where we get to think kind of outside the box. What if? What could we do? So we're in that process right now. Like I said, we have an update from the architects coming in August. And then somewhere, when Mike and Dr. Weber seem appropriate, we're going to come to the board and kind of give you an update of where we're going with it. And, hey, the team is all behind this. We'll give you an update on how that process is going. Probably, the board has a busy agenda, but probably September, October, initially in these two projects, because that's where most of the design is going to be focused.
And you also notice on the schedule, there's a pink section called design. That's not just TMP going out and doing design and saying we're done. That's an interactive process. So it's not they go off in private and go do it, and here we just kind of fund it. It's an iterative process where they're coming with ideas, they're reviewing them, making sure, and ultimately, before we spend money, the board gets to look at things and go, yeah. So there's going to be actually a lot of interactive relationship with the various schools on all of this.
And the construction management, one of those other kind of services they provide during those stages, it's kind of regimented in building and design construction. It's called schematic design, design development, and then construction documents. So during those phases, we'll take a little pause, give a set of plans to the construction manager. They'll go through and do estimates on those drawings as the design developments, because we can't get too far out of the weeds as far as if we add a bunch of scope, or we're going to have to figure out how to pay for that additional scope. There are some avenues sometimes with other funding, other ways, but we do estimate checks along the way to see, okay, are the designs as they progress still within what we thought we were going to be able to fund this? So at some point, some of those estimates will come and present along with the design updates.
Will there be some community involvement too, or was that only during the bond study phase? Like I just remember kind of with Hillside, I felt like there were some checkpoints that the community got to give some input, or am I misremembering?
As far as community input, as far as maybe informational sessions, yeah, there was some for Hillside. Are we going to talk about having community input on the LED project retrofit? No. But probably for Meads, there might be some more informational meetings because it's going to be a big impact. But I'm not saying these projects aren't going to have that kind of global impact, but Hillside was a reimagination of that building. I mean, we literally flipped it on its axis and upside down. So the level of community involvement, I'm not saying it's going to be probably less than something that we experienced at Hillside.
With Hillside, we had some strategic decisions to make. Because we talked about options, we have, the property at Garfield. Do we just go ahead and just renovate the current building so we talked about some different options and that's really where we wanted to kind of get that community input strategically. Where do we want to go?
That makes sense.
So as opposed to, what does this look like or what does that look
Fair
like?
enough. Okay.
And we had some much larger staff meetings when it came to Hillside. I mean, kind of every program space, we sat down with teachers and design members that, many design teams that Bill had put together for science spaces and, general education classrooms and collaboration spaces. So they'll be part of that process. It will still be there, but it's just on a smaller scale.
Okay. That's great. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
I just had a question because in our last meeting, we were there was talks about what the the state budget would be relative to education, but it hadn't actually been passed. And now that it's been passed, I know you had a finance subcommittee, so I don't want to make you go on about it, but just some sort of, do you have any comments, Mike, about it or relative to what was in it based on what we discussed at our last meeting?
Yeah, well, certainly, obviously the foundation increase of 5%, the biggest one that we've had, even including the 22-23 year. So, it's fantastic, to get that kind of foundation increase. You will also get some supplemental money, not a ton, but, things like even at risk, we'll probably get about $95,000 more than what we did in the past. Special ed funding has gone up to 100%. So the one thing about that is that the way this gets somewhat convoluted, but when we have Act 18 programs, so currently Act 18 programs are actually funded first from the state. And then what happens is RISA comes in and fills in the gap so that it's cost neutral for us to run those programs. So what's happening now is the state is actually going to increase its funding. And so what'll happen is that's less of a cost burden than on RISA. So I think we'll make out in some fashion on special ed, but probably not to the full extent because of, the Act 18, the way it's funded.
So if I understand you correctly, you're saying that we would cease to get the money from RISA. We would just be getting the money from the state. So it's not like we would get that at plus some. We would only get up to that point. Okay.
Correct, right. So basically, Act 18 is supposed to be cost neutral. You're not supposed to be making money nor losing money on it. So it's a shift in funding sources. But for other non-Act 18 special ed, there will be an increase in funding. So we'll benefit from that. There's a continuation of a mental health grant in there, which is great. And we're trying to think what else will benefit us.
Wasn't the lunch?
Pardon me? The free lunch, right. The free Michigan school meals program. And I know there were a couple of questions. I think Karen had a question and Kim had a question about, how we're going to do that. So we actually met with Abdul and Rebecca and Carrie Morfino, our food service director, last week, because that will entail some added staffing in order to do that. And in order to actually participate in that program, you have to offer free breakfast as well as free lunches. So it's not an either or, you have to offer it. So that's going to require obviously some staffing, see how we can best manage that. But it'll be great for our students. So that's a big part of it.
Would that impact busing at all? Would we need to get students to the buildings earlier for the breakfast, or how would that work, or how has that worked in the past?
I'm sorry, what was that?
If we're going to serve breakfast, do the students have to have access to the building earlier?
So we talked a little bit about that. So, so as you know, with the Silver Springs pilot that we ran last year, so Katie Booth was fantastic in terms of helping us coordinate that, because based on her experience at Wayne Westland, they did have breakfast and it was in the classroom. So she helped, I think, work with her teaching staff to, the breakfast that we did have at Silver Springs, it was in the classroom. And most likely, that's probably what we're going to have to do for all the elementary buildings. Part of the problem is that, we're running a 3-tier bus program. if you want to have breakfast before school starts, it's difficult to get all the kids there on time to do that. That's kind of the issue we have with middle school. Middle school is going to be probably our biggest challenge, actually. And so when Bill and Brad get back, we're going to need to work with them, because right now there is a little buffer between the completion of the completion of the high school runs and the beginning of the middle school run. There's a little buffer in some cases, but not in all cases. So what happens is you're not going to be able to get kids, middle school kids, there early enough in order to eat breakfast and then go to class. So we're going to have to work through that a little bit, see how we can best manage around that.
Do you know, is this on a year-by-year basis?
Well, this
Yeah.
obviously,
So
Yeah.
we would, by the time if we figured it out, and that we don't know if it would even
Yeah.
exist.
There's some effort at the federal level too.
Sure.
To fund free lunches nationally.
Sure.
Who knows what'll happen in.
who knows what'll happen after next year? But I hope they keep it, because it's hard for not only the kids, it's hard for parents. Going back and forth in staffing. If we go and actually acquire the staff that we're going to really need to implement free
Yes,
breakfast,
right.
and next year if we switch back to a conventional way, it's just not a good thing. So hopefully they keep it in the state budget. So keep our fingers crossed.
Well, thank you very much for just
Sure.
commenting really quickly on what has happened since.
Yeah, and I think there is a town hall tomorrow at 2:00. And I know, Karen, you mentioned you're going to be there or attend, and so hopefully we'll learn a little bit more about the reimbursement process and some other details around the program from the Department of Ed.
Have y'all had any updates on SRO hiring?
Yeah, I talked to and speaking with Todd Muchler and then Chief Masiak. I know that they're getting applicants, and I know that there are at least 2 within the township that are applying for the additional township SRO position. So they're in the process right now.
Great.
Yeah. And I know for the city, they're scheduling, they do have some applicants that are currently outside the department, not current police officers. And they're trying to schedule those interviews, and we would have Bill Jones as part of the interview team, along with Rebecca and actually Jen Bugard too. So
Great.
Yeah, Bridge just did an article about how police departments are having the same issues as teacher shortages as well.
Finding people.
Yeah, finding people.
It's hard to find great people.
It is.
I'm sure.
Any other questions or comments? Fair enough. Let's call us adjourned at 7:50.
Thank you.
I really thought this one was going to be.